Hi everybody, welcome. My name is Becky Simon. I am with Naperville Preservation. Naperville Preservation is your local, independent historic preservation group. We are the group that worked to preserve Old Nichols Library. We worked to preserve the Kraler Mansion. We tried and failed to save the Kraler YMCA on list. We are here tonight in large part because of Harold Moser. It's a name I hope you all know. He was a man of vision. He helped shape the Naperville we enjoy today. Harold developed the concept of builders making donations of land for parks and schools as a way to invest in the future of Naperville. In the post-war building boom, Harold had the idea of creating affordable housing in Naperville, which he felt was ideally positioned for growth. It was. It exploded. Starting in 1954 with what has become known as East Highlands, he brought in a group of builders with very diverse designs. That's why we don't have these cookie-cutter homes. These builders built a lot of innovative, cutting-edge residential homes, ranch houses, split levels, 2 stories, houses with lovely picture windows. There's Mike. Mike Clardy has the most beautiful picture window in Naples. Houses with 2-car garages and space for dishwashers. Big improvement. Moser would go on to create West Highlands, Maplebrook, Crest Creek, and many other subdivisions. It was said that he probably built a quarter of the homes in Naperville. But over time, these houses that were once new and innovative slowly became ordinary and vernacular. And these once future-focused houses became, frankly, less popular. Naperville Preservation believes that these vernacular homes represent a very important time in Naperville's history, the time when Naperville changed from being a farm town to a vibrant suburb. We believe there is value in the vernacular. The ordinary is just as important as the exceptional, perhaps even more so, because these mid-century homes captured so much of the life of Naperville. Now, once again, Naperville is a time of change. Teardowns have arrived in Naperville. Today, less than 50% of East Highlands' original houses remain. Riverhaven Estates, a much smaller neighborhood, is still largely intact, for now. That's why Naperville Preservation felt it was important to take a snapshot of what remains and document it. We commissioned an architectural survey of East Highlands and Riverhaven Estates. Big thank you to the donors who helped make this happen. Naperville Seco Fund, the Driehaus Foundation, Landmarks Illinois, and Elizabeth Konopka. Thank you all. With that, I will turn it over to our friends at Preservation Futures, Jonathan Salmon and Elizabeth Blasius.
Thank you so much, Becky. I'm going to try to actually pin this microphone myself. Can everybody hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Great. This is so. As a preservationist, I'm used to speaking to very small crowds, and so to see so many people here coming out with an interest in the preservation of mid-century modern housing is just terrific. You may all be Naper villains, but you're also all Naper heroes. So thank you for your interest and your support. I'm Jonathan Solomon. This is my business partner, Elizabeth Blasius. We are the founders of Preservation Futures, a Chicago-based consulting firm on we do historical research, we do preservation policy and preservation advocacy, and we were thrilled to be contacted by Naperville Preservation to help with the survey of East Highlands and the Riverhaven. I'll tell you just a little bit about Elizabeth and I and what we do, and then Elizabeth's going to quickly come and take over and talk about the survey process and findings. And then I hope that there'll be a chance for a little bit of conversation, because I would dearly love to hear from folks who've lived in these neighborhoods for 70, 60, 50, 30, 20, even for 10 years. So without further ado, Elizabeth is kindly moving my slides forward. I will move hers. Our firm is interested in helping to push the boundary of what is considered historic. And we do this in a couple of different ways. One of the focuses of our firm's work is on what I would call the recently historic, or the architecture of the relatively recent past. I'd say that as a person born in the 1970s, I am acutely aware that the 1970s turned 50 this decade. And although buildings from that era are now old enough by any objective measure to be considered historic, they don't tend to fall into the kind of stylistic categories or association with time periods that we kind of culturally accept as being historical. So we began our work, Elizabeth and I, together on the James R. Thompson Center in downtown Chicago, a building of 1985, very much associated with the future at that time. And today, or at least when we encountered it about 5 years ago, professionally, considered already to be out of date, but yet not valuable historically. We worked on the nomination of this building to the National Register of Historic Places and other forms of advocacy around it. Its future remains unknown. It was bought by a developer in Chicago and then later by Google, but we've yet to see what will come. We were interested in the building because of its aesthetics, because of its technology, but also because it was a public space, and it was where the people of the state of Illinois would go to speak to their government directly through protest and demonstration. So we also tried to kind of expand what parts of history are important to capture and tell. Please. Out in the Chicago suburbs, we've been at work on the Will County Courthouse in Joliet. This is a 1969 concrete government building in a style that is referred to as brutalist. That refers to the use of concrete brute or raw concrete. It's not a universally loved style, although it is increasingly a sort of niche, trendy style. And regardless of whether or not it's a building that you like aesthetically, it is functional, it's operational, it embodies a tremendous amount of existing carbon and energy. And there are developers who want to convert it into a hotel, a conference center, or other forms of private use. The county thinks it should be demolished at the taxpayers' expense. So we're working very hard to convince them not to. Next, we also work quite a bit on the kind of fringes of architectural style. So these are two buildings that are vernacular. That was a word that we just heard in reference to the mid-century modern homes in Naperville. And you know, buildings where we don't even know the name of the architect are often hard to classify as historical. The building on the right is the Emmett Till and Mamie Till Mobley House in Woodlawn in Chicago. The architect is unknown. It's a typical Chicago 3-flat. Its exterior has a good deal of integrity, but its interior was renovated and ultimately stripped by squatters who were living in it. We've been working with the environmental advocacy group Blacks and Green, who bought the house in 2021 to win local landmark status and national recognition also for the house, and to kind of guide its restoration as a museum to Great Migration and Civil Rights history in Chicago. On the left is another vernacular building. It's but a very different one. It's on Chicago's east side on 91st Street and Ewing Avenue in a former industrial neighborhood across from what used to be a steel mill. It's a tied house, a Schlitz tied house. It was a bar, essentially, and rooming house that was run by the Schlitz Brewing Company. It sold only Schlitz products. It served generations of Eastern European immigrants, largely a big Serbian community that worked in the steel mill across the street and used it as a de facto space for, obviously for drinking, but also for the kind of conversations that you can't have on the assembly line, and for social events and things like that. And it's gone through a range of different owners. The current owner is working on restoring it as a bar called the East Side. Finally, just a note that we also had a chance to participate in the process to designate the new Emmett Till and Mamie Till Mobley National Monument at several sites in Chicago and also in Mississippi by writing national statements of significance for buildings such as this, the site of Till's funeral and viewing. Next, please. Is that it for our firm? Yes, great. Okay. So that's sort of who we are, and when we encountered the challenge of the disappearing vernacular mid-century modern houses of Naperville, we were intrigued. These are houses that once stood for the future and for progress, and that still can and still do, and capture a moment in the region's history, really, when it was on the cusp of real extraordinary change. Elizabeth will take over it and tell us a little bit more about the process of the survey. But yeah, I'll just hand over to Elizabeth now and we can go from there. Great. Here, I'm going to pass you this too. Great.
Thank you.
Yes, that's microphone off me, and I'll move the slides.
Great.
Great.
How's that? Can everyone hear me? Okay, great. I'm Elizabeth Blasius, co-founder of Preservation Futures, along with Jonathan Solomon. I'm an architectural historian. I'm also a writer. I write a monthly column for Mass Context. I've written for the Chicago Tribune, the Chicago Sun-Times, and for the Architects newspaper. And I'm going to follow Becky's lead a little bit, and can I play a little parlor game? Who's from the East Highlands? Hands up, hands up. Wow, okay. Great. Who's from Riverhaven? Wow, okay, excellent. So we're all going to play pickleball later. Right. Nice. Wow. So if you see your house in our presentation or in any of the survey books, which it looks like a lot of you folks purchased, which is really wonderful. Please raise your hand and let us know, and we'd be happy to speak to you as we give the presentation, but then also after. We, as a firm, we really foundationally are very invested in demolition patterns, how to prevent demolition of valuable buildings. And so this project was really, it resonated with us because not only is it important to think about very carefully what we demolish, but also home is the first piece of architecture. It's the first interaction that people have with architecture. So it really, researching these homes and researching these communities, these subdivisions really kind of allowed us to explore architecture that so many people are familiar with already. Your home is your architecture. It's your place. So it was very exciting to do this research, and we thank Becky and we thank Jade and Naperville Preservation for bringing us on. So we started off with conversations about what sort of was happening in the East Highlands, the Moser Highlands, which we surveyed first, and then we surveyed Riverhaven afterwards. So the hottest points of summer 2022. And the patterns that we saw are obvious in this slide here, where you have 636 and 640. They're right next to each other. One is an original home. The other one is the result of a teardown. So one of the things that we found particularly interesting in terms of the new construction versus the, I'm going to find this piece of information for you right in the survey book. that there's like a 3,000 square footage difference between the original homes and these new construction homes. But then, of course, the lot lines don't change. We know what demolition materials have done to our landfills. The EPA says that 10% of all of the materials in American landfills are coming from construction and demolition, and that out of that 10%, 90% come from just demolition. So we are really, as we're demolishing things, we're harming our earth. But we also know that these buildings are viable. They're affordable housing. They represent a really important part of Naperville's history and American history, both in the way that mid-century modern suburbs were sort of come out from the countryside and into modernity. So this project was really a wonderful one for us to work on in a variety of ways. Jonathan, next slide, please. So we began researching the history of Harold Moser and the East Highlands. Naperville Preservation had observed over time that mid-century modern homes were being torn down and replaced with new construction. The demolition was occurring without an opportunity to evaluate the Moser Highlands for historical or cultural significance, or to study the impacts of the removal of stock of affordable vintage housing that the Moser Highlands provided. So we conducted the field work from July 20th through July 27th in the Moser Highlands. So we'll talk principally about the Moser Highlands, since that was to the larger survey, and then also River Haven, which is a bit smaller. Next slide, please, Jonathan. In order to do the survey, we used an iPhone app called Regrid Property Software. So you can go on your, not to give iPhone anything, but you can download this survey software on your phone, and it links to sort of other data, lots of data that's been collected by municipalities. So we started the survey off kind of with the Regrid software as a basis, and then we customized a bunch of categories within the Regrid software. So we were able to sort of categorize things from, was there a previous survey? Becky had done this really wonderful survey in 2020, so we were able to integrate that information into our survey. So it's sort of multi-layered. It's got our information, our current information, Becky's information, and then stuff from the county too. So you can kind of look at all of that together on the Regrid software. We customize the menu options, and of course within the Regrid software there's a camera, so you can just go right up to the building, take a picture, and then just go right into your phone and just add the photo to the data set. And this is really great for us because it prevented us being in the field with clipboards or pens or anything like that. It allowed a good consistency of photos, and allowed us to just sort of get the information sort of into the software very quickly and then start kind of aggregating it. We analyzed the field data in August 2022, and then we drafted our report in September 2022. Next slide, please, Jonathan. We developed a survey methodology based on discussions with Naperville Preservation. We looked at primary source materials, so we did research on the plats, took a look at historic aerial views, and we used the original 6-unit map of the Moser Highlands to create a survey area, and followed those boundaries as the project scope. We manually extracted Becky's data, added it to the, so this would be the 2020 survey information. So within the Regrid app, which we provided all of the data to Naperville Preservation, so they can just sort of click on all of the different categories, and also update things as buildings get demolished. unfortunately. But this is one of the really wonderful things about a modern survey tool, where it's instantly updatable. So if something changes, it's very easy to kind of go in and really understand that change and sort of watch the data change. The goal of the fieldwork was to photograph and catalog original structures and to classify their features. I think you can advance the slide, Jonathan. So we, to determine this classification, we used, in your book here, you've got appendices that provided us with a model for identifying and evaluating the historic significance of the home using a already established report. So we used this report survey methodology for individual properties. We made corresponding subcategories. So we had an original structure or new construction is sort of our first two categories. With the new constructions, we just took a photo and then we just sort of left that data alone. So we have information, photos on the new construction. With original structures, we had additional drop-down categories. So architectural style, stories, plan, foundation materials, dominant and secondary window types, and then also character-defining features. So, what really makes that house special, what makes it stand out. And something that preservationists like to call integrity. So if you were to go back in time when that building was built, how much has it changed? If it hasn't changed very much, it's got a lot of integrity. If it's changed a whole lot, it has very little integrity. So we used all those categories to just sort of photograph and analyze each of these homes. And we also have to thank Paul Lehman for Harold Moser's nephew for a visit that we did to the Macomb offices. He provided additional information on the areas, and then also Harold Moser. So the categories we created in Regrid were the new construction was photographed and manually cross-referenced with the 2022 survey. So, we took some notes on what was just demolished in, only the 2 years. And 35 properties that were identified during the 2022 survey that Becky did were no longer extant. So, 35, that's a fairly large change in 2 years. And we're talking about a neighborhood of 575 properties. So, 35 had been demolished during that 2-year period. Overall, we identified 223 structures as original structures, and we identified 233 properties as new construction. So, as Becky mentioned, it's about half and half. Next, of the properties noted as so this is the whole survey area. It kind of resembles a beat. Bounded south by the DuPage River. Next, Jonathan. Out of the, so these are the original structures that we mapped. Out of those properties noted as original structures, 107 were identified. We identified them as split level. If you're familiar with a split level home, it's got a split level. It's got two levels. It's got 92 were identified as ranches. Out of those 92 that were identified as ranch, 5 were identified as cool ranch. Thank you for laughing at that. Other styles occur less frequently. That's just to make sure that no one is sleeping. Yeah. Like a really terrible Doritos chip. Other styles occur less frequently and include minimal traditional, transitional ranch, Cape Cod, and raised ranch. Split levels we identified as both having a front and a back split, and several structures. Next, Jonathan. We identified as having a high level of design excellence. So this is 643 Melody Lane. You're familiar with anyone's house? Oh, hello. Wonderful. Hello. Great. Oh, okay. My goodness. Well, I wouldn't ask you to give your address. Okay, I had it written down wrong here. Okay. So we identified several homes as having exceptional integrity and then also exceptional significance. So Jonathan, forward. Great. This is 643 Melody Lane. This is correct. Yes. Next slide, please. And then 840 Santa Maria Drive, and then 48 Golden Larch Lane. Next slide, please. What was particularly exciting was when we started doing the research in the Chicago Tribune, different trade publications. We would find Kloppenberg and Son Builders. If you think about the slide that we just showed, those. Thank you, Jonathan. Those were as-built. So Harold Moser in setting up the Moser Highlands as a subdivision worked with 8 different distinct builders. So you can really see the difference between all of these different designs and how really lovely they are and how they're so representative of the period. Full wall mirrors, large bedrooms, wardrobe closets, laundry rooms, plaster and lath, and a 2-car garage. Very affordable price. Next slide, please. So we, with the Moser Highlands, those properties that we identified as having high significance, they're certainly historic, they're certainly landmark worthy, but the overall value of the East Highlands and also Riverhaven is that these buildings really are part of American history, they're part of Naperville history, and they are threatened by tear downs, by these what you call very large McMansions that have lots of materials, take up a lot of energy. So gosh, I guess we can take questions now. Sounds good?
Good.
Great, okay. Yes, Jane.
Elizabeth, I think if we go back to the picture that shows where the demolitions have taken place and where they're not, that one.
Yes.
I think it's very interesting that the area where the most original structures are still standing is along the river. Here's the river. This section has the most original homes still in place. The further that you go to the east, where you're getting to Columbia, etc., those are the ones where there's very few left. And I just think that's an interesting kind of observation about how people have chosen to preserve or not.
Are the lot sizes all about the same?
Lot sizes are all about the same, and I think one of the things that was so attractive to people and continues to be attractive to people who are building new homes is the winding streets. This is not just a grid, and I think that's very attractive to people too.
Yeah.
Were you able to access original blueprints?
Were we able to access original blueprints? No, we were not. There were none available. But we did look at we looked at the plat maps, and we did gain access to some of the homes. But no, there were no original blueprints.
Did you find anything unusual during your research? Something totally unexpected?
Jonathan, you want to?
Did
we find anything unusual during our research?
I could venture an answer, which is simply to say that though the houses are what we would consider to be vernacular, right? They're houses that were intended to be affordable, that were intended to be bought and lived in. There were some that really stood out for design solutions that kind of mixed a modern sensibility with an almost prairie sensibility. And we wouldn't want to say we found, but we noted the work of Don Tosi, architect Don Tosi, who designed a number of the houses in the survey, and who was a student of, and actually was the general contractor for Bruce Goff for the Ford House, and tried to sort of trace that lineage of Goff's houses were, I would say, they're unclassifiable, right? But they are certainly not repeatable, right? They're sort of, each one is an individual, strange and wonderful one-off thing. Tosi, who again was the contractor, he was the general contractor, found all the people to do the building for the Ford House, learned from that, learned all the techniques, learned from the design approaches, and then kind of systematized them into, actually the image I want to show is our friends in the back, whose address shall remain anonymous, right? But this kind of like low balcony, yeah, we encountered a number of these that kind of translate some of Goff's kind of prairie sensibilities into a a style that could be packaged and repeated and done affordably and done reliably. I think there's more to be discovered there. Personally, I think there's more to learn, and there's obviously more to see because we weren't able to gain access to each individual home. And again, the purpose of the survey was to look at the data in aggregate and to really be able to make arguments about trends that were occurring. Not necessarily to record in detail each and every house we see at hand.
I just wanted to make a comment that at the time of Don Tosi's passing, crates of house plans were donated to the Naperville Heritage Society. And my late father, Royal Lowing, was a masonry subcontractor for Tosi. So much of the patio, the hearths, the interior and exterior brickwork and stonework were done by Royal Lowing. But have you tapped into Naperville, the Heritage Society? They would be happy, I know, if you make an appointment to share these plans for the homes.
Thank you.
Did you or no?
No.
No.
Well, we did not.
We did not, but we did our Tosi research at the Art Institute Library. So there is a Don Tosi collection that includes some...
Right, well the majority is right here in Naperville at our Fort Hill Drive storage chamber where all of these volumes and large items are preserved.
Okay,
Wonderful.
well thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, so you don't have to go to the Art Institute. I mean, you can, but I mean, that's just a drop in the bucket, is what I'm saying. The majority is right here.
We'll follow up, actually.
Good.
I think we would love to talk.
Good, thank you.
Again, the survey kind of, for us, kicked the door open to Tosi as a historical figure and his history and background, and to this kind of, again, this translation of the Goff work into a different kind of scale and scope. But we'd love to learn more, so we'll follow up afterwards.
Could I also make a plug with another grant? Maybe it's part of the same grant. We hired NCTV, Naperville Preservation, and we did a video of this home here. So thank you very much back there for letting us in. So my friend Tom and I, we got the grand tour, and we were coached through a performance. So you can access that video on Naperville Preservation's YouTube channel. Just look us up on YouTube and you'll see the video.
I have a question. Is that the house with the fairy garden?
Yeah, it looks like it. Yeah,
Yes,
they have
that
the
is
little
also
illuminated.
spectacular. The house is gorgeous. And then there's even more. There's a lot to look at. A good house to find. Go for a walk.
The fairy garden is exceptional. Yes.
When you say the original houses, what years, from what year to what year are you defining the original house?
So the construction of the East Highlands began in 1954, and the East Highlands was composed of 6 separate sections. You know, Harold was pretty smart, as he was able to get farmland, he was able to kind of expand the East Highlands. So there are 6 different plats, and the plat maps are in the book. So like I would say 54 through 62 probably for the East Highlands. For Riverhaven Estates, it was a bit later. Plans were drawn in 58 and through the 60s.
If I may, we certainly found that there is almost perfect integrity in both the Moser Highlands and Riverhaven Estates. Riverhaven having a lot of integrity, having mostly original structures. But for the Moser Highlands, all of that teardown, really, the teardown stuff happened very, very quickly and very recently. So I can't recall what the complete perfect integrity up until just very few years ago. So it's very interesting to see that there's nothing from the 80s, nothing from the 90s, just stuff from the 50s and 60s, and then the 2020s. Yes?
Unrelated, but any further questions? Can we bring a mic closer to people so we can hear a little more?
Sure. Oh, yes, absolutely. So sorry. I'll repeat the questions. Does that work for everyone? Okay. Yes.
Not to be an East Highlands snob, but what is Riverhaven?
Wow. Wow.
He wants to know
Not to be an East Highlands snob, but where is Riverhaven? The East Highlands look like a bird. Yeah. Right here.
I know that area very well. Okay.
I spent most of my, I grew up in a suburb of Detroit and didn't know the name of the subdivision that I grew up in until I was in my 20s. So, sometimes these names are names that we know well, sometimes they're not, sometimes they're colloquial. Wow. Yes?
Oh, Riverhaven purposely tried to stay anonymous so no one would know we were there because we didn't want them to come in and tear down our pretty little houses and build with mansions.
Wow, excellent. Well, it works, so yes, do you want to repeat that? Okay.
Yeah, the comment was that Riverhaven purposefully tried to remain hidden so that no one would know they were there and no one would move in and buy and tear down their lovely homes and replace them with great big mansions.
Good strategy.
Which is a great strategy.
Good strategy.
Do you have a map? Excuse me. Do you have a map like that for Riverhaven?
There's a map in the book. We don't have it on the. You'll have to buy the book. Yes. I see hands that have been sort of waving. Oh, the question was, is there a map like that for Riverhaven? And the answer is, you have to buy the book. I saw some hands going up on the way back.
We're going to join forces here. We have one question. I just am wondering if I'm hearing you correctly. It sounds like what you're saying is that the homes in the East Highlands perhaps have more value together because they're a collection of similar properties. What if there was just one or two standing? I mean, would we be as interested in it? And is the value in the fact that there's a lot of them?
Yeah, the question, although great, I'm glad you joined forces. You spoke with the voice of two people. It was very loud. Okay. Oh, you have a separate question. Okay, so can I answer this one first? Okay, the question was, is there more value if there are a number of properties that are original, that are near one another, than if there are just a few properties that are original? And I think the answer is that the value is, from our perspective, is that the value is different. That the individual architectural value of the homes is the same, whether there is one or there are many. But the understanding of the development strategy and of the quality, spatial quality of the neighborhood is really lost when, even if the lot lines and the streets remain, when the houses are gone. So there is something uniquely valuable about a grouping of these houses, even houses that are not themselves architecturally, that don't stand out architecturally. There's a value to a group of them that remain because you can really understand the scale of life, what was considered to be actually a very good life, right? And contrast it with the scale and the kind of attitude of that life today. And yes, the level of integrity in River Haven, the level of integrity along the river in the East Highlands is palpable. I don't have to tell you if you're all aware of it. You all live in and around it. The ability to walk through those neighborhoods and feel that scale is worthwhile. But look, I think that preservation is it should be voluntary. It shouldn't be forced. And when it comes to people's homes, it becomes even more difficult, right? Like, I'm even being careful because I don't know if anyone here lives in a contemporary house and loves it. I don't want to pass judgment on your contemporary house. Like, you're allowed to love your home, and you put a lot of money and effort and investment into your home, and it's important to you. And it's not preservation's job to impose limits on what people do with their homes. It should be to educate people about the value of retaining and caring for history, right? And then for individual landowners to opt in to preservation, either in a formal way, either by forming a district and opting in to landmarking your individual properties or to forming a landmark district, because it's something that is valued. So it can be, there's value in numbers, I think is what I'm trying to say, right? Like, if there are a group of people who all want their homes restored and cared for in their original form or close to their original form, that can increase the power of the effort. Sure. What was the second question?
Yeah, so the second question, like, you talked a little bit at the beginning about the fact that many houses from like the mid-1800s, let's just say, are considered historic, but we're not really looking there and saying like something from 1955 or 1960 is historic yet. Do you think that will change over time, or do you think there's simply like a period of Victorian architecture where it's like, hey, that was it, and if your house doesn't look like that, you're kind of out of the club? And then what, so to speak, so like, or what can we as homeowners do, like, actually just kind of segueing against what you just said, what can we as homeowners do to, like, protect our homes, knowing that we hope they will last, beyond the lifetime of us owning them? So like, how, if there's no historic status, like, how can we best designate them as something that should be preserved?
I'm going to repeat the great question. I'm going to then pose it to Elizabeth, and then I think actually Naperville Preservation might have some answers also, or some responses to make. The question was, we had stated that we encountered, we struggled with the general perception that historic meant 1880 to 1920 approximately, and that anything after that was not historic and would and could never be. And the question was, do we think that was going to change? And the second question was, what do we do as owners of modernist homes that we value to protect them? And I'll pose that to Elizabeth.
Thanks. We're of the thinking that preservation is evolving because history is being made every day. And one of the most valuable things that we find doing research on buildings that are from the 1970s, 1960s, 1980s, even 1990s, is that a lot of the folks that really experienced those buildings during the first, they're being brand new, are still around. And that's really, really valuable, just in terms of hearing oral histories, having experiences to sort of share and add to the historic accounts of buildings. So historic preservation has this sort of idea that things that are 50 years or older are considered historic. So we as a firm really like to kind of break up that notion, because everyone is a historian, everyone has history. Your history is important, whether it's your home's history or your family's history, and that history isn't 50 years old. So preservation certainly shouldn't be adherent to those standards either. In terms of what you can do, perhaps our friends at Naperville Preservation can come and help answer that question. Preservation is, but I will say that preservation is, it's a culture, it's history, it's research, but it's also government policy and ordinance. So, you certainly as a constituent have the ability to go to your local elected official and say, we want a stronger preservation ordinance, or we want more incentives. So maybe the you can't do this is a little bit quieter, and the if you do this, here is the incentive that's attached to it is a little bit louder. That I think really helps encourage people wanting to participate in preservation in the moment, but then also in the future.
So I live in a house with a historic plaque. I never thought that would be me, but yes, my house, built the same year that my husband and I were born, we now have a historic plaque. If you're interested in finding out if your house is eligible for a historic plaque, you can talk with Andrea Field. You raise your hand, Andrea, from Naperville Settlement. She can help you with that. And not to be a River Haven snob, but we have at least 3 people in this room who are living in houses that their parents built. So great way to do preservation. You want to be like Mike and Ginny and Kay. You can pass your house on to your children. If you have other questions, contact us at napervillepreservation.org. We'd be happy to help you.
But let's put it into Naperville context for just a minute. So I think one of the reasons that you asked.
Hi, I'm Jane. One of the reasons that you asked the question is, trying to fit it into Naperville's context. Naperville's preservation ordinance was passed in the 1980s. When it was passed, the Highlands were not eligible for preservation because the rule is it has to be 50 years or older. Now, of course, we're far later. These houses are definitely eligible for local landmarking or national landmarking, and we just have to be aware of that. I think we live in a city where when the ordinance was passed in the 80s, we created the historic district, and everybody thinks about the historic district. But, East Highlands, River Haven, West Highlands, they are all historic by national preservation standards these days. And so, maybe we should kind of think about that a little bit.
Okay, Kath, real quick. And Andrea, what does a plaque mean? Do you want to come up here real quickly?
Hi, I'm Julie Nelligan. Oh, yes. I can use my farmer voice. That's good. I am a farmer. Hi, I'm Julie Nelligan. I'm Director of Development at Naperville Settlement, and Andrea Field, my colleague, is here with me, so she'll fill in the blanks. But we are trying, what we're focusing on now are these subdivisions for the plaquing program. And I'm just going to quote from our website, and you can go to our website and get all the information you need at napersettlement.org. But basically, the plaquing program was started in 1970, and currently we've probably plaqued over 150 homes in Naperville, and it's to recognize the properties that are historically significant, architecturally significant, and tell a story about Naperville, or tell a story about the people who have lived and worked there. So it's preservation. It's preserving your home. And and I know we talked about the historic district, but if you drive down any of those streets, you are going to see a plaque almost at every house. And it's really cool. It's really, really cool. And the application, so you fill out an application on our website, it's attached, and then Andrea, that goes through a committee, correct? To make sure that you fit all the criteria. If you fit the criteria, then we will be in touch with you to get the plaque to you. It's a $75 charge, and it's all yours. Any questions? Yes?
Once established in your house, this worthy of a plaque, are you restricted on that?
No. So the question was, if you are approved for a plaque, are you restricted to anything else you do to the house? As far as I know, no. Is that correct? Yep. So Andrea has confirmed that. She's our curator of history. She knows it all. Any other questions? Come on up, Andrea. Here we go. We're tag teaming.
Hi. I just wanted to say the purpose of the plaque program is fundamentally education. So it does not come with any sort of restrictions on how you can use your property, nor does it really protect from demolition. But our goal when people see the plaque is for them to get interested in not only the house, but also the plaquing program and what history looks like in Naperville and how it might not look like what you expect it to look like. And so it's really kind of an educational outreach program more than it is any kind of like restriction on what you can do with your property.
Questions? Okay. Here you go. Oh, no. Okay.
All right. Let me finish up here. One more question.
Did you guys do any thing with West Highlands? No.
Not yet, no.
But we could.
Okay, everybody, I want to say that these books you see over here tonight are made possible by the amazing hard work of Marilyn Schweitzer, who single-handedly formatted the books and produced the layout. Also, we will have copies at Naper Settlement at the library. Do y'all know that Naper Settlement has a library that you can go in and use? So I want to give those to you now. Here are your copies for Naper Settlement. Those are yours. And one last thank you. Gail Diedrichson, where's Gail? There's Gail. Gail brought the cookies and the coffee. So thank you very much for Gail. Thank you all for coming here tonight. I hope you understand this is an important part of Naperville's history. We've just come to think of it as typical, recent, but this is an exceptional part of Naperville's history.